Hey everybody, welcome. Good evening, good evening, good evening. It is a great and glorious Sunday and it is 7 o'clock Eastern Time on Sunday, May 26th, 2019. And I want to welcome each and every one of you to Sunday Night Live. Yay! Hello, hello, hello. I am your host, Shannon LaBruyere, and I am live and loving it tonight because I am going to talk about something that is pretty spectacular. It was a concept that totally changed the way I led people and how I dealt people, and I am really looking forward to sharing it with you. So welcome. I'm so glad you're here in the United States. This is a holiday weekend. It is Memorial Day, where we give honor to the military people that fell, that have died in service to our country, in their commitment to protecting my freedom. They sacrificed their life. I am grateful for every veteran that we have here in the United States. For the sacrifices that they made. Some of them died on the battlefield. Some of them died because of health issues that they had that they got while they were serving our country. So I just want you to know that if you've lost a loved one in service to our country, I appreciate their sacrifice. Thank you so much. Brenda Mass, I am so glad to see you. Welcome. Thank you for jumping on. It is a pleasure to see you. Excellent. Oh, it's so fun to see new people jumping on and experiencing Sunday Night Live. So thanks for being here. I want to give a big shout out to my friend Bethany. I just met her this weekend on a trip to Indianapolis to celebrate my niece. She just graduated. Macy graduated. She is officially an adult, although I'm not sure if she's stepping into that quite yet, but really, really exciting to be there and share with them. Kevin Burrows, awesome. Glad to see you. Michael Powell, so good to see you. I haven't seen you here in a while. Thank you for jumping on. We're getting ready to talk about some really, really powerful stuff for leaders. And so if you don't think of yourself as a leader, before you jump off and go get a bowl of ice cream and go back out to the barbecue, I want you to stop and think about the definition of leadership. And leadership is this: influence, nothing more and nothing less. Welcome, Dawn. I'm glad you're here. We're talking about leadership, and I'm talking to leaders. Leaders are people who influence. So whether you're trying to influence a pack of toddlers, if you're trying to influence a bunch of parents at the PTA, if you're a CEO who is trying to influence the board of directors to make decisions for the company, whatever level you are at, if you are influencing, you are a leader, and tonight's message is going to help you to lead more effectively. So, without further ado, let's get started. Tonight, we are going to talk about input. The importance of getting input. Now, in my false definition of leadership for many years, I thought the definition of leadership was the ability to make decisions. And I was more than happy to make decisions. And I am not going to lie, I made a lot of decisions that were not good. I made them quickly. Hey, Bill, glad you jumped on. Rick, I'm glad you're here. Thank you for dropping in. We're talking about leaders and input. And my false conception that as a leader, my job was to make decisions, to be decisive, to get out there and tell people how it needed to be done, to be able to set the course and tell them what to do and make those decisions, right? But it turns out that leading like that isn't really leading. It's bossing people around, and especially toddlers and grown-ups just hate that. They just hate it. I had neglected one of the most important things when it comes to trying to influence people, and that is soliciting input. There's a few reasons why input is so important, and I want to share a few of them with you. And if you can think of others, feel free to pop them in the comments because I love to hear what you have to say about it. But some of the things that came to my mind when I was thinking about input and how valuable it is one of the first things that came to my mind was when we get input from the people that we're leading, it helps us to avoid making false assumptions. For years, I worked with people in the Gallup Q12 process. So it's all about engagement and getting employees more involved. Many of you I know who listen to this and who watch Sunday Night Live are well familiar with the Gallup Q12. And one of the most important things about the Gallup Q12 polling process is you ask employees, what do you need to get your job done? What do you actually, this is how they phrase it, do you have the tools you need to do your job? And basically they kind of rate that on a scale of 1 to 5. So there's very little definition that goes into that. They just say, yes, I either have them or no, I don't. And so I know of this nurse who was in charge of a department, and they did the Gallup Q12, and they discovered that the employees in that unit did not feel like they had the tools they needed to get the job done. And so she was a leader, and she made a decision. And so she realized that for many months, she had seen a need for a new software program for them to manage some of their patient data. And so she went ahead and said, you know what? We're pulling the trigger. We're paying that. We're going to get that software in here. We're going to do what we need to do to make sure our nurses have what they need to do their job. The problem is she didn't ask for any input. And so they put a lot of time and thousands of dollars in doing a new computer system for that unit. And what they actually needed when she asked them for input? Office supplies. They didn't have enough sticky notes. They didn't have access to staplers. Such basic stuff. So cheap, so easy to do. But as a leader, she made a false assumption about what her team needed without asking for their input. Ashley, I'm so glad you jumped on. Thank you for being here. All right, so the first reason why input is so important, it helps us not make false assumptions. The second reason is it keeps us from taking things personally. I know of a person, I was actually in these meetings, a young leader who was having some staff meetings, and every week she would bring donuts and nobody would eat the donuts. And she finally got really, really frustrated about it. And she told me, she sort of blew up and said, you know what? I'm sick and tired of people not eating those donuts just because they're mad at me. It's like, what? Yep, they're just not eating those donuts that I bring to that staff meeting because they're mad at me. Well, if that leader had asked for a little bit of input, she would have discovered that all of the people in her staff meeting were on a diet. One of them had diabetes. Some of them were on the low carb craze, right? So she took it so personal because she didn't ask a clarifying question. She didn't ask for some input from her team. Another powerful reason to solicit input. Ken LaBriere, so glad you jumped on. I'm married to Ken LaBriere, and he is awesome. And I love it when he pops onto my videos. And Julie, I'm glad you're here as well. And I saw Ashley step on, so thank you so much for being here, you guys. All right, the third reason that input is so important to a leader is it enables us to improve our service, our processes, and our effectiveness. When we ask for input from our team, instead of having one set of eyes that sees one set of circumstances, we can have 2 sets of eyes, 10 sets of eyes, 100 sets of eyes that are helping us to get a great understanding of what our systems are and where we can fix them, where we can improve them. It even works when we solicit input from our clients, right? When we ask sincere questions from our clients, how can I serve you better? How was your experience? How did this go? Getting that input allows us as leaders to be able to be more effective and to help the people we serve more efficiently, more powerfully, and more authentically. So those are the 3 reasons why getting input from our team is so important when we're a leader. Dawn, I'm glad you're here. Carol, yay! I'm so glad you jumped on. Dawn, it's a pleasure. Hello, hello. All right, so now that we know why input is important. Hey, Terry, I'm glad you're here. I don't think you've jumped on in the past. You guys are awesome. I'm so glad you're joining. We're talking about input. And we're talking about how as leaders, sometimes we don't ask for input and it really creates some blind spots. And so one of three, not all of them certainly, but three of the reasons that are so important for us to solicit input from the people we're leading and influencing are: it helps us to not make false assumptions, because sometimes we can take very expensive, costly action based on false assumptions. So it helps us to get the clear picture. Why is that happening? What do you need? Second one is it helps us to not take things personal. I have a great friend at one of my coaching compadres, Michelle Burkhardt. She's amazing, and she has a phrase that I adore, and she calls it the Q-tip. It's quit taking it personal. When we solicit input from our team, we get information that helps us to quit taking it personal. We start to understand that the reason they're making the decisions they're making isn't because they hate us or they're mad at us or they don't like us. It might feel like that. It's not the truth. When we solicit that input, we find out exactly what it is, and we Q-tip. We quit taking it personal. And then the third reason is it enables us to improve our service, our processes, our effectiveness, and it allows us to connect with the people that we are serving as leaders in a way that allows everything to improve for them, for us. Our results improve, their environments improve, and our customers and our clients get better service. So input is so valuable for that. So now, are you ready? I'm going to get to the crux of why we don't ask for input. All right. There's three traps that we fall into as leaders. When we don't solicit input, there's usually something like this behind it. It's not just that we forget. We're not just forgetting to ask people. There's a reason why. So let's talk about some of the reasons why we don't ask for input. All right. If you're writing these down, there are three of them. Number one is this. As leaders, we very often equate asking for input as asking for permission. For some reason, we start thinking that if we get input from the people we're serving, from our team, from the people we're leading, we think that if we ask them for input, what that means is we're actually asking them for permission to do what we have to do. And that is a big mistake. Asking for input is totally not the same thing as asking for permission. Two totally different things. Just so yay! Heart, heart, heart. Thank you for being here tonight. All right, we equate asking for input as being the same thing as asking for permission. As leaders, you and I both know. Hi, Maggie. Gosh, I'm loving all the people jumping on. As leaders, you and I both know. That's probably not appropriate when there's more than one person listening, but you know what I'm saying. We know as leaders that we sometimes have to make hard decisions that people don't like. And I'm thinking of one of the times I was in a processing plant, and what they decided to do, the management team decided they needed to be able to watch a process. And so their idea to do this efficiently, effectively, and with relatively little cost was to install cameras above a conveyor belt so that they could see everything that traveled down the conveyor belt. And what they would also be able to see, although this isn't what they were wanting to necessarily watch, but they would also be able to see all of the employees who were part of that process and what they were doing as it was moving. And so I was helping lead this team, helping them to grow as leaders and helping them to navigate some really challenging changes in their plant so that they could serve the customers better. So my role there was to ask some really great questions and help them to implement their strategies in a way that was going to help them to be successful and not have them shoot themselves in the foot all the time. And so I asked the question, well, what did the employees on that conveyor belt have to say about those cameras watching that process? And there was dead silence in the room. People were looking at me like I had just, I don't know, they looked at me like I was crazy. And so I asked it again. I'm curious, what did those employees think about that idea when you ran it by them and said, we're thinking about doing this? And one of the managers got kind of huffy with me and said, "Oh, we're not telling them." I said, "What do you mean you're not telling them?" He goes, "Oh yeah." He goes, "We're not asking them for permission." He goes, "We know what we need to do and we're doing it." See the mistake? I didn't say, "Did you ask them if you were going to be able to do it?" I asked them, when you shared this plan with them, what did they think about it? And it was about 40 minutes of tough discussion with these managers to help them see that by them asking the employees for input about where should those cameras go, what did they know about this process that they were trying to improve, if they would ask those employees for input, not for permission, they knew that they had to do some things to fix that process. They knew they needed to be able to watch it in sequence and have some film to be able to evaluate it. None of that was part of the question. The question was, how much input did you get? What did they say about it? Hi, Megan, I'm glad you're here. So as a leader, make sure that you're not jumping to this conclusion that asking your employees for input is like asking them for permission, because it is totally different. Two totally different things. And we sometimes, oh, Jared, hi, I'm glad to see you. I haven't seen you in a while. Great to see you. As leaders, we sometimes doubt ourselves and we're afraid to ask the people we're leading for input. We're afraid to find out what they think. I want to encourage you as a leader, when you know what needs to be done, when you know that there's an outcome that you have to make your business strong, to make your family function better, to make getting ready for school in the morning for your kids a little easier, you can know what needs to be done, but you can do a thing that you know has to happen and ask for input from people, and they will respect you more. They will go along with you more. They will give you information you didn't have. Asking for input is totally different than asking for permission. You can stand strong as a leader when you know something has to happen, even if it's unpopular, but you can also make that process so much easier for the people you're leading and so much more effective for the people you serve when you ask them for input. What would this look like for you? How would this work best? Why wasn't that working? Tell me. I thought it was a great idea. Tell me what went wrong. Speak to me, people. Ask for input. You don't have to be afraid that asking for input is going to make people think you're asking them for permission. They know the difference, and you as a strong leader will be able to stay strong in what you know is right and ask those kind of questions. All right. The next thing, we jump to this conclusion when it comes to asking for input. We jump to the assumption that it is going to make our job of leading more difficult. Oh my gosh, I'm not going to ask people. Everybody's got an opinion and I'm just going to make a decision. Well, you know what? In all seriousness, that is a-okay if you decide you want to get pizza and it's all going to be pepperoni and it's done. But when you're doing something like consolidating 7 different facilities into one big plant, and you're wanting 1,600 people to come together and work together, if you don't start asking some of those people for input, your change that you're trying to implement as a leader is going to go horribly awry. The more important the decision, the more important it is for you to solicit input from people. It may feel like that makes your job more difficult, but I promise you that is a short-term thing. Yes, there may be a meeting, and it's one more meeting, and it's going to delay things a little bit, but getting key people together, representatives, if you work in a union environment, getting some of the union leadership together is a great way to solicit input without having to go to 1,600 people and poll them about what color would they like the locker room to be. But you can get together a committee of people and solicit input. As a leader, spend some time when you want to influence people to change. Before you make that change, spend some time planning how you're going to do that with them. Who are you going to ask to help you make that decision? How are you going to solicit the input? And don't be afraid that it's going to make your job harder. Because especially when you're working with adults and you as a leader decide, I'm just going to make it simple and I'm going to make these 10 decisions. If you do that in every area of your leadership, you are going to alienate people and they are not going to get on board with the changes that you want to see happen. There are some changes as leaders that we have to make, and nobody gets to make the decision but us. We hold the bag. We know it has to happen. Sometimes those decisions are challenging and difficult. Sometimes they're financially based, especially for businesses. There are things that we have to do as business owners that are not always popular with the people that we work with or who work for us. I understand that. So I'm not saying that you as a leader never get to make a decision. What I'm saying is that the more you can solicit input from the right people about the decisions you're making, the better those decisions will be. They're going to support your goal, your improvement, your efficiency so much better. So don't be afraid to get the input. Samantha, it's so good to see you. Hi, I'm glad you jumped on. Without input from the people that we're trying to lead and influence, without input, we are making decisions in a vacuum. And I just want you to know, if you're a leader who is helping make change happen in your workplace, I want you to know that as a leader, you can ask people for input, and it doesn't mean you're asking for permission. All right? You can ask people for input, and you are actually allowing them to be more engaged, to be more part of the process. When you ask key people for input and listen sincerely, it does not make your job more difficult. As a leader, it gives you more information and you're making fuller decisions because you're getting input. So that's my heartfelt, and I do mean it's heartfelt message tonight about the value of input and the things that get in our way as leaders when we get afraid to ask the people we lead to share with us. It doesn't matter how old they are. When you ask for input, people are able to buy in a little better. And this is the other thing about input that I want you to consider. When you as a leader, whether it's, and again, when I'm talking about leader, we know leadership is influence. That's all it is. So if you're trying to influence a 3-year-old to go to preschool and not have a fit, if you're trying to influence a board of directors to approve a budget item, it's the same leadership principle at work. When you give people the power to give their input and their opinion, you empower them to be part of the process, and they own it, and then they step forward into it. I did this with my son Michael. He was making my life miserable for kindergarten. Every day when it was time to get up, he was having a fit. He was so upset. He was dragging his feet. He was creating chaos for the whole family. And finally, I asked for some input. Mike, these mornings have been horrible. What can we do to make these better? I can tell you're miserable. What could we maybe do to make this better? Well, he came up with, he's 5 years old, gave me some input. I didn't have to act on it because as the leader, the strong leader who knows he's going to go to school. So if he says, I don't want to go to school, that's not an option. If your employees say, I don't want to ask those questions to the customers that come to the retail shop, I don't want to upsell. Well, we know as leaders, depending on what role we have, that that's not an option. This is something that we are going to do. It's a company policy. Maybe we didn't make it ourselves. So we know we don't always have the control or the desire to give them what they want, but giving them input empowers them to be part of the process that affects them every day. So when I asked Mike, what can we do here? What is making your morning so difficult? Turns out I wasn't waking him up early enough. I was giving him as much time to sleep as possible. And it turned out that 5-year-old Michael realized, well before his mother did, that he needed a little bit of time to wake up. So yes, I can wake you up half an hour earlier. I thought he didn't want to go to school. I thought for sure when I asked him, he would say, I don't want to go to kindergarten. I want to stay home. I want to play. So I was afraid to ask for the input, but when I did, I was pleasantly surprised. So always ask, be strong as the leader, and know I don't have to do what they say. We can say in a genuine fashion, Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing that with me. I will consider that. Thank you. And stop there. You don't have to say yes or no right that second. Thank you for sharing. Wow, I didn't realize you felt so strongly about it. Or, oh, that's an interesting take. I never knew. When we get in the habit of soliciting input from the people that we are trying to lead, that conversation leads to more transparency. It leads to employees who feel empowered to be able to take action to help move the whole unit forward toward the goal. And all of that happens just because we as leaders stand strong, aren't worried, aren't concerned that we're going to be swayed or convinced unnecessarily, and we ask the people that we are serving as leaders, what is your input? What do you have to say about it? Angie, I'm so glad you joined us. It is great to see you. And Barbara, thank you for jumping on. I enjoyed, Barbara, I want to say, I enjoy your Facebook posts. So there you go. I enjoy your Facebook posts. So that's pretty cool. You guys are great. I am so grateful that you've taken time out on this day where we're honoring the men and women who've lost their life in service to our country. I'm in the United States. I'm really grateful that you're here. If you've got some comments or questions, pop them on because I'd love to see them and hear them. And I always hang out for a little while after we finish our Sunday Night Live and answer any questions and just kind of chit chat because I like getting to know you better. And I really love the two-way street of communication that Sunday Night Live gives us. So thank you so much for being here. Last thing, I want to remind you that if you enjoy Sunday Night Live and you've missed some, or your schedule doesn't always allow you to be able to tune in live, feel free to check out the YouTube channel. It is there for you so that you can access the whole video archive of Sunday Night Live, and you can access it 24/7, 365. All you have to do is go to YouTube and type in Shannon LaBruyere, and you will see the channel pop up. And I'd be so honored if you subscribed, because when I hit 100 subscribers, we are going to have a little party and we are going to name that channel something awesome. I'm thinking something cool like Thrive and Change. I don't know why. I just love that. Monica, thank you for jumping on. It is a pleasure to see you here. And Carol says, great advice. Communication is so important. You know, communication is important. And I'm going to jump in on that, Carol, because that is such a great point. Communication is important, but I want to remind us leaders that communication isn't just that we're informing people of what's happening. When we treat communication like it's a megaphone instead of telephone, two-way street, when we treat it like we are just here to tell people what's happening and not ask for their thoughts about it, we are being disrespectful to the people that we're trying to serve. And it's not really communication, it's announcements. We're making announcements. Again, it doesn't mean that we have to do everything they say, but sometimes they just need to give us their input and let us know how they feel about things. And then they can move on and take action and move our business or our church or our study group or our PTA forward. Awesome. I love you guys. Thank you for joining us tonight. I hope that you have a wonderful evening. And for those of you who have to jump in and go back to work on Monday, God bless you. For those of us here who are able to take Monday and use it as a day to reflect and be grateful, have a barbecue, but also consider some of the great sacrifices that the men and women of the armed forces have made for our security. I hope you enjoy that tomorrow as well, and I look forward to seeing you all next week, 7 p.m., Sunday Night Live with Shannon LaBruyere. You can thrive in change. Have a great night. Mwah.